we have not yet discovered the enjoyment found in this kind of deep prayer. We just haven't found it. For most of us, prayer is more like work than like play. It's a duty, an obligation, which for most of us conjures up images of self-flagellating monks cloistered in these dark prayer cells in some ancient monastery. And even evangelicals who pride themselves on prayer and talk about prayer, they talk about the work of prayer, the discipline of the devotional life. In fact, they even talk about prayer as spiritual warfare. And we're going to be prayer warriors. I remember in the old days, we talked about that a lot in church. Urging people to be prayer warriors, fighting the good fight, the spiritual battle against the powers of darkness in prayer. But you know, I understand that's a biblical image, but I'm not too big on prayer as war anymore. I tend to be drifting toward prayer as play. Now, I remember growing up, we used to play war. You know, I remember my brother and I have a brother that's a year older, and we'd be hanging around and we'd say, what do you want to play? I don't know, what do you want to play? Let's play war. Okay, we'll play war. And we'd go out to the field across the street, and we'd get lost in playing war. And there was no malice in it. I didn't hate him, he didn't hate me. It was just play. It was more play than war. And I understand philosophically why people don't want their kids playing war. When I raised my first son, we never allowed him to have toy guns. And we did that for a long time. And then finally one Christmas, he opened Grandpa's Christmas present. And here was this shiny 6-shooter in a leather holster. And, what are you going to do? So it went on from there, and then, we just got to let it go. And when it comes to prayer, and I understand that the image and the metaphor about prayer as war, because it can be a dangerous thing. I mean, when we go to this place of being deeply honest and open with God, it can be a dangerous thing. Everything's stripped away, and it kind of becomes this crucible of transformation. And we fight this battle with ourselves and with God. I know all of that. But, unless we come to discover the enjoyment inherent in this prayer, we'll never really be successful, because human nature is such that we tend not to do the things that we don't enjoy. Unless we learn to enjoy playing around with contemplation and prayer, relaxing in it, experimenting with it, getting lost in it, enjoying it, it's going to be just one more religious obligation, one more ecclesiastical weight which drags us down. Now, it's interesting that the Greek word for prayer, hezekia, means literally to rest. To pray is to rest. And those fathers and mothers of the early church who spent their lives in the desert praying in the early centuries were known as the Hezekiahs, those who rested. Now you might say, what's so restful about living in abject poverty in the middle of the desert and praying and meditating all day? But it's interesting, when you read their writings and their stories, they reflect this lightness of being, this deep peace, and even a sense of playfulness. For them, this deep prayer was not only their vocation, it was their avocation. It was not only their work, it was their pastime and their play, and they enjoyed it. It wasn't just a weight to be borne. But why do people of faith find so much difficulty in just being still and knowing that God is God? We resist the idea. We don't believe it's for us. It's just not our style, or whatever it is. Why do we have such difficulty? I don't think it's because we're not committed, we're not spiritual, we're not serious about our spiritual lives. I believe we simply haven't discovered the enjoyment in this conversation in this deep communion with the divine. Now, I was thinking about this as I kind of assessed our season this year, and what a wonderful season it was. And we have a church that loves being together. But I asked myself, why is it that when we have a spaghetti dinner, we have 100 people, and when we have a meditation group, we have no one? Well, my first response was, it's the sauce. It's the spaghetti sauce. Well, now, understand me. I'm not saying that spaghetti dinners are unimportant. They're vitally important. They're sacred times. Table fellowship is so important. But so is meditation. And again, I think the reason that we don't have a response is that we haven't come to understand the enjoyment factor in that exercise. We still think that we need to go to our prayer closet. I remember the old days in the evangelical church. Go to our prayer closet and get down on your knees and bleed and pray and beseech God. But that's not what this verse is saying out of Ecclesiasticus. It's saying, go home and gather yourself there and play.